Good morning. I'm Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. I'm being joined today for this special WTR Small-Cap Spotlight Flashcast by my colleague and Senior Research Analyst, Robert Sassoon, to discuss recent deal activity in the psychedelic sector and related takeaways to said activities. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning to you, and nice to be with you again.
Likewise. Robert, in a recent note, you highlighted a couple of significant ongoing deals in the psychedelic sector. So could you run us through some of those deals, please?
Sure, Tim. So there are two important transactions currently dominating the space. Significantly, I think both these transactions provide tangible value benchmarks for promising novel serotonergic treatments for clinical depression. So the most significant of these transactions is AbbVie's acquisition of Gilgamesh's lead novel pipeline drug program, bretisilocin, for major depressive disorder, or MDD, and for up to $1.2 billion. Now, that includes an upfront payment and development milestones, details of which have yet to be publicly disclosed. So bretisilocin, which is also known by its development code GM2505, is a DMT analog, and it's a rapid onset serotonin receptor agonist. Now, the transaction actually builds on a collaboration, an option to license agreement established by the two parties last year. Under that arrangement, AbbVie paid Gilgamesh an upfront consideration of $65 million, with an option to license bretisilocin and other pipeline developments that Gilgamesh is working on, with potential milestone payments of up to $1.95 billion. AbbVie's decision to acquire outright the bretisilocin program obviously, I think, sends a clear signal that it likes what it's seen in the novel development for MDD following a recent readout from a phase 2A trial. Now, AbbVie will also retain the original option to license Gilgamesh's other pipeline developments, which will be spun off into a separate independent entity to be called Gilgamesh Pharma on completion of the bretisilocin acquisition. The second transaction that's really worth noting is Atai's purchase of the equity that it does not already own in Beckley Psytech. Now, back in January 2024, Atai initially invested $50 million for a 35.5% stake in Beckley, which valued the company at $140 million. Now, Atai's interest in Beckley has since been stoked up further by the advancement of Beckley's lead asset, BPL-003, which is a 5-MeO-DMT-based drug development for treatment-resistant depression. Now, TRD is a subpopulation of the clinical depression market, affecting about, I would say, 100 million people across the world, which is about 1/3 of the broader MDD market. So BLP-003 recently delivered a positive phase 2B data showing robust efficacy with a positive safety profile. So the Atai-Beckley deal is an all-stock transaction, which is expected to be satisfied by the issue of 105 million new Atai shares, which at current prices would have valued Beckley at around $750 million. So that's more than 5 times the value implied by Atai's initial investment.
Great. Robert, it strikes me that the AbbVie Gilgamesh transaction should probably be considered a watershed moment for psychedelics. If you agree with that categorization, please elaborate.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. I would say this transaction is potentially the largest, big pharma company investment in psychedelics to date. Notwithstanding Johnson & Johnson's investment in bringing Spravato to the market, but AbbVie is best known for its immunology drug platform, and but it has aggressively expanded into and spent big on neuropsychiatry in the last couple of years, particularly since its flagship drug Humira, its blockbuster immunology drug, started to go off patent. Anyway, in December 2003, AbbVie acquired a company called Cerevel Therapeutics for $8.7 billion, only to have to write that investment down by about 40% in January of this year, following the failure of Cerevel's lead schizophrenia drug candidate. AbbVie will be hoping for better fortune with bretisilocin, but certainly its decision to acquire outright that program was no doubt encouraged by the robust data that came out of the phase 2A study. So that data demonstrated outstanding efficacy and durability outcomes. So granted that this is a more risk-adjusted transaction structure for AbbVie than buying out the entire company as it did with Cerevel, The fact that it's willing to pay up to $1.2 billion for an investigative program, which is still in the early, relatively early stages of clinical development, presents itself as a mark of strong confidence on the treatment's commercialization potential. And that potential seems to be reinforced by how well Spravato, for instance, is doing. It's a third Spravato is a third line drug treatment for treatment resistant depression, and it's been doing very well. Spravato sales have more than tripled since 2022, and the drug is now firmly in the blockbuster category with run rate annual sales running at around $1.7 billion as of the second quarter of this year, and still growing at a fast clip, driven by continued increase in physician and patient demand.
Very interesting. Just kind of wrapping up here, Robert, what do you think will be the implication for valuations in this sector looking ahead, given the developments you just highlighted?
Yeah, well, this is my own opinion, but I believe that AbbVie's valuation serves to reinforce the perception for that next generation of psychedelic-based therapies, which can demonstrate rapid and durable efficacy, present strong commercial opportunities. Now, could be argued that the AbbVie, Gilgamesh, and Atai Beckley Cytec transactions establish a value benchmark for those perceived to be the most promising novel candidates for the treatment of clinical depression. But looking at the range of values for some of the more advanced and promising programs, these transactions could, and I would even argue, should present themselves as a trigger for increased valuation.
Great. Thank you, Robert Sassoon, for letting us glean insights into recent deal activity in the psychedelic space, and to read Robert's industry and company-specific equity research reports, as well as to access countless other small-cap equity research reports from Water Tower Research. Please go to www.watertowerresearch.com, and we'll see you next time around.